All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Austin Light with Comics, and I'm joined by my friend Brandon Ingram with Dismay Comics, and we're here to talk about our craft as per normal and any other thing that we feel like is worth mentioning. So, how you been, Brandon?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Uh, Not to get into details, but based on both myself and Austin's text before, we had good biology this morning. Um, Things are working okay.
Yep, our bodies are functioning really well. I was a little bit drunk last night, and I'm kind of recovering from that today, but I feel good, so maybe I'm still a little tipsy. It could be a possibility. Um, but I wanted to start off with the Comics Wellspring shipment for my comic is finally coming in. This will be the probably the ultimate final version of the issue one. Um, all typos that we noticed are corrected. Sizing of the pages are good, and um, it's going to be the trim down to the size that standard. So I'm excited for that to come in, and it'll officially be February by the time that comes in. When I had ordered it on like December 26th.
Yeah.
Which is par for the course from what
Yeah.
Brendan had said.
Yeah. Yeah. I've talked about it in previous episodes. Like for the cost and price, it's great. Um, the wait time is it's not the best. Like you can usually expect close to a 2 month wait time, but
Hmm.
if you know that going in, it's not too bad. If
You're
it's your
right,
first
right.
time, it you see that 14-day thing that they say, you're like, it's triple if not quadrupled that now. You're stressing or whatever, but you know that going in, it's no problem at all.
So, as we were talking about before, Brendan, you're finding it hard to write because of either it's just kind of times constraining, or you're finding some content that you're working on that may be beneficial for everything that we're doing, but not quite what you want to be doing.
Yeah, ultimately, the thing is, I still love writing, and and I wouldn't say it's any form of writer's block or anything like that. Like the plus side with writing for so long is keeping. I have notes on my phone, keeping a basically a notepad of ideas, whether it's a one sentence thing or if it's like a paragraph outline of a story or whatever. Been doing that for at least a few years now, to where if I'm ever like, well, what should I write? Like I'm in the mood for writing, but what should I write? Like I can't come up with an idea or whatever. Just scroll through and then boom, okay, I'm in the mood to write this. So that's
Hmm.
the plus side there. There's no writer's block, hasn't really been a thing for me. Not really ever. Maybe starting out writing it was. All that to say though, finding the time to write can be tough sometimes. Um, Working around like my job, that's not tough at all. But also the big thing is before I get into like this other stuff that I am randomly throwing my attention at, with writing, it's at least for me, I have to be like secluded. Like I have to be uh in solitude. Like I can't have like some people write like this. I can't have like music or anything. I'm just in my
Hmm.
room, laptop, or in my living room, laptop, and just going at it. And I can't really like like conversate or or spend time with someone during that, because I'm just like laser focused on the story. Um, that's something that also like kind of stinks about being a writer is, at least when you're writing, ultimately it is like you're you're not associating with people at that time.
Hmm.
I bring that up because, like, at least with artists, not saying it's all artists, there are, you get in a zone almost,
Hmm.
and sometimes you don't want like distractions and stuff like that around you, like people talking and stuff. But there are like events and stuff, like drinking draws and stuff, where
Hmm.
like you could be drawing and you're also like conversating with people. The thing that sucks about writing is like you can't do that because you're so laser focused, and you don't want to get like pulled out of that focus kind of. um that's, yeah, like, and the reason I
Well,
bring that up is like, I'm not, when I'm writing, I love to write, but I have to like etch out the time, because when I do write, it's going to be at least like a 3 hour session, just
hmm
about, because I want to get a whole story done. I want to get half of a story done, that sort of thing. And that's like, I want to spend time with my family as well. And when I'm writing, I definitely can't do that. It's not like if I was drawing and my brother or sister's in the room, we could talk here and there. Like I can't operate like that.
hmm So I just kind of found my flow, where I kind of strike a um, kind of zoned in moment. But for me, a lot of the times, I do find myself trying to like wanting to be distracted by things while I'm trying to draw. Um, so what I was going to say though is, yeah, there's a way to be like doing a drink and draw, but like I'm not going to be doing good, like that's a brainstorm kind of thing. And what I was
Mm-hmm.
going to mention is that might work for writing too in a brainstorming kind of situation with other writers or something. Um, but like I don't know, and it would be very like off the top of my head kind of situation of drawing. I wouldn't be able to make anything. I don't think that would be um, any kind of a finalized version. Uh,
Yeah, I get that.
but um, what you might could do is if you're wanting to be with your family, you can take some of that distracting content that you can do simultaneously and work. Because like I'll do like when I'm watching anything with my girlfriend, or letting her play the video game or something, and then I can sketch without um, having to think too much, because that's actually kind of a
Yeah.
great time for me to sketch is when I don't have to invest all my brain power into it. I couldn't do like like making my actual pages,
Mm.
but it's a good time for me to practice on something. Like I don't need brain power to be like, here's a leg and I'm gonna like kind of copy how that leg's gonna,
Right, right.
you know, uh, or or get the anatomy of something.
Yeah, and there are some stuff. I should say, like, not all of writing I do completely in solitude. Sometimes there is stuff like the writing part, yes, that is. But when it comes to like editing, for example, the story is all completely done. So the editing part isn't that like
Hmm.
focused, or that like constraint in my brain to where like I can have other people in the room, or I can be like with family and we're watching Family Feud or whatever, and I'm looking at my computer here and there or during commercial breaks and working on it a little bit. So stuff like that, or sometimes like looking at comic pages, um, in like editing and sending back to an artist. I can do that sort of stuff because it's not as laser focused as when I'm writing the story. I did realize recently with Curbsided, the first story, I was at my family's house. We were watching TV or we are watching something. I think like Transformers, the new Transformers movie came on, like Beast Wars or something,
Mhm.
Age of the Beast or something. And I was trying to edit because I have the sketches, the page sketches on one side, and then I have the script on the other to just see if it's flowing okay in terms of the panels. Because I'll imagine the word balloons in the script onto those panels
Mhm.
to make sure it goes okay. And Transformers Beast Wars or whatever the heck it is just kept getting me out of like that imagining thing, and it was
Mhm.
tough for me to think. Not that I was like sucked into Transformers at all. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't like, oh, like I
This
just
is
got
a
to keep
gripping
watching.
story.
Yeah, I gotta stay with this. No, it was just like noises and stuff that
Mhm.
like dumb noises that kept distracting me.
Yeah. Um, for me, it's helpful. Like, I don't know or don't think that like writing would be this fluid, but for me, it's helpful to like make some content that is like associated with what I'm watching. So if I was
Yeah,
like
yeah,
watching Transformers, I would be like drawing some kind of
that
mechanical
makes sense. Yeah.
uh craziness, like, trying to make an abomination of a transformer. Um, but what I was gonna mention earlier, there's sometimes where I don't get into a flow and I have to really like force myself. But I think I nailed down what it is that I love doing. So there's a difference between like line work and inking. And like line work, I don't really enjoy like having to like really like I'll have to make a skeleton. It's getting less and less. I'm not having to do this as often, but like make a face structure and making sure the eyes are like a good, like I want everything to be aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, but like the
It
amount
doesn't
of
have to
work
be
that gets put into line work before
mhm,
you move on to the next step. Is that what you're talking about?
like it like there's like the penciling and then I do like a preliminary line work layer and then I do a final line work layer. And if in that final, I'd like really try to like find problem areas that um, I didn't catch at first, so that like before I go into inking, it's not like going to be really hard to turn back on.
Right.
Um, but like once all the line work is to my satisfaction, then I get to render it with ink and do the inking process. And that's where I really I like putting like hard blacks in areas and making things kind of pop out with the black, and then putting shadows where it makes sense that shadows go, uh, and having trying to have an idea of where the lighting is and also trying to like frame the panel. um, So I've been doing a lot of like vignettes, where it's just kind of like an encroaching black around the frame sometimes, so that uh, it kind of gives the whole frame a depth, but also points you to like where the focus is. And um, but no, the inking, like I really got into the rendering. Like I went through panel after panel, just throwing in those blacks and those. I do some hatching for shading
Mm.
in some areas, and like the lines are getting really nice and crisp and straight. And I'm like seeing my own work kind of get better. So um, I was just in it for like an hour and a half, 2 hours straight, which is a long time when I'm working at my desk at the gym. So Nothing annoys me more than when a somebody needs something, they need to talk to me or something, and they'll come up to the where I'm drawing, and like I'm focused in on drawing, and they don't say anything. They're just watching me. And then I just kind of like feel like eyes or something. I look up and then they're like, "Hey, didn't want to bother you there." And I'm like, "I work here. You can bother me.
Yeah.
Like, please bother me." I don't want to seem like I'm ignoring you or rude. Just say hey.
Yeah, you just gotta, like, alert me. Yeah, yeah. That's funny.
um. So yeah, that was my small discovery yesterday. Because like I've always said, I enjoy the inking, but I never separated it from the line work because sometimes the line work is kind of annoying. Because I
Yeah, yeah.
because I have to kind of hold myself back from putting in those black areas right away because I got to make sure that the structure looks good.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, like, you mentioning the person coming and, like, wanting them to kind of, like, alert you somewhat. It's not entirely this, but it did make me think, regarding my when I write. I'd mentioned before that when I write, I want at least, like, 2 to 3 hour block of time, and most of the time, it goes longer than that.
Hmm.
Struggle with that, though, is, like, etching out that much time in a day, 'cause there are breaks in the day where it's like, "Oh, yeah, I've got, like, a 30-minute or an hour break," but, like, when I get in the zone of writing, like, it might take me 10 to 15 minutes to truly get in that zone, but I don't wanna just be, like, pulled out, like,
Hmm.
shortly after. Like, if I'm in
Yeah.
the zone, I wanna, like, stay in that zone, um, and that can just be tough because so much like, a long block of time is dedicated to that, and that's where I get, like, some of my best stuff is whenever I'm in that zone and it is a
Hmm.
long block of time or whatever. But then there are, like, the caveats of, like, oh, like, there's other stuff to do in the day or see family or whatever. But I've been able to schedule it better to where, like, I either do the writing all up front, like that block of time, and then everything else happens after, or I'll do all that other stuff, whether it's job, chores, family.
Hmm.
Definitely family, that's a big thing. I never want to feel, like, guilty about, like, like, I'm not spending enough time with family because I'm writing so much or whatever. So I try to make sure I etch out that time, and in my brain, it's almost like, "Alright, yes, like, I did it, spent time with family.
Hmm.
I I feel okay. I don't feel like I'm I'm, like, pushing them aside or abandoning them or whatever." And now my reward is kind of like this block of time for writing.
Yeah.
Um, that's a big
Oh, I can
thing.
relate because there's things that I have to get done that kind of stack up over the week. I got to get dishes cleaned or laundry cleaned and clean the cat litter and uh, cook food on occasion and some of that stuff will be like on my mind if I am if I don't find that it's like really pressing and I try to ignore it and work on something else. It like affects what I'm trying to work on
Yeah,
because I'm like, I should really go do that right
yeah,
now. Like,
yeah. And it might, like, cause you to subconsciously, like, rush the
hmm.
process, whether it's writing or art, because you know you have to do that later. That's why I try to get as much of that stuff done as I can. The downside with that is, like, sometimes it's like, okay, I got all the stuff done, and now it's like 10 o'clock at night, and my brain is fried, and I
Yeah.
there's no way I can write right now.
Sometimes I have to look at it in day chunks too.
Mm,
So if I can Um, the best example recently is if I did everything on Wednesday, I'll usually have time to do a little bit of work on like today. But there might be like we got to run to the store and we got to cook and stuff. And then Saturday comes and I get my son on that day. Well, if I can do some of these other chores before I get him, uh, then Sunday is completely open. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's like I can make Sunday just wide open for anything I want to do, and that's always awesome because I need that full day to just relax and just piddle and draw. And you know, I usually work on like traditional stuff during that time on the couch while I'm listening to Bigfoot lore or something. So that's always like just an amazing day, and I can go back into Monday really refreshed. Um, but I do a lot of my digital work at my job because it's a very for one, like my desktop computer doesn't have the same pressure sensitivity, and I haven't figured out why because all the settings look the same as they are on my laptop.
Yeah.
And so like my drawings will come out different. Um, but also at work, it feels like a very work environment kind of place. I'm at a desk and there's an ambient sound of like some people talking, and I have to answer the phone occasionally, have somebody sign up occasionally. I got to take care of like just some document stuff. And like I can be in a very work minded like or workspace mindset like that. I can just get things done on digitally. Sometimes I work on my website there. Um, and then at home, I'll work on more traditional stuff like practicing sketching and the thumbnailing of everything. Uh, but sometimes thumbnailing, like writing and thumbnailing, kind of go hand in hand, and so I can do that at work a lot easier than I can at home because I can kind of uh, I don't listen to I usually don't listen to music either unless I'm like really doing intense drawing, like
Mhm.
really energetic drawing, um or trying to capture an emotion of a time of a scene. I'll listen to like some kind of music I think fits what I'm trying to go for, and that helps. But usually I'm not listening to anything. Again, maybe just some UFO or Bigfoot lore in the background if I don't have to be thinking consciously about something.
Yeah. That's good. That that kind of made me think, like a side note of this, when you're at conventions, um, because we've both seen this, there are dead periods at
Hmm.
conventions, oftentimes. Even if it's a fairly big convention, there's going to be some dead periods. Are you able to or do you draw or anything during those dead periods? Or
So sometimes I have tried on occasion, and there were times where I kind of like got into it so much that I wasn't paying attention to some people coming by, and I don't
mm,
want to do that. Uh, I do want to like be able to do a commission, like a quick 30-minute commission or something. Like if somebody's
mm,
like, I want so and so, portrait, and like portraits are easier, and I've got these um these big thick like sharpies that will make like a quick thing, and like and then I just some simple tools that will help me to like just make a quick thing for 25 or $30.
yeah, yeah.
I haven't had to do that yet, so I don't know how it'd go. Um, but if I have a goal in mind, I can probably work on it a lot easier. But I have tried to like draw and stuff, but there's so many times like being in cosplay and interacting with like the big influx of people. Like once that dead
Yeah.
period comes, I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah. Just drained. Yeah.
So I don't want
What
to like.
you had mentioned, like you mentioning that makes me think like I've talked with Tio before because he helps me with most of the conventions I do of like you never see because I just wouldn't be able to do it because I get in the zone. You never see like someone writing during those
Mhm.
dead periods because one like you're going to get pulled out of that flow if someone comes by, or you're just going to block out everyone. It's like, what's the point of you being at the convention? You paid
Yeah.
$100+ so you could sit at a table to
Mhm.
write when you could have just done that at home or whatever. Um, but then I also, like you mentioning that, I just thought like how draining and exhausting conventions can be. They're great, but they are like exhausting to
Mhm.
where you get to that dead period, that like mid afternoon or whatever it may be for specific conventions, and you're just uh, like like I just like yeah. So yeah, thinking about it, that makes sense. Like for
So.
art, just not
Mhm.
feeling, not really like not able to slash
Mhm.
feeling like being able to do it, kind of
And it
just because of that.
it depends on like the setup too. Like the Anime Fest and the Huntsville Con that I did at the Embassy Suites, it was so tightly packed. Like our
Mhm.
tables were just right next to each other, and I would have had no room to like. I would have had to like prop it up on my leg and like try and draw that way. And it's like
Mhm.
sometimes the setting just isn't conducive to it either. I'm thinking so like at the last low mill con I did, we had plenty of room. We had a lot of room.
That's
And
good.
what I'm thinking is I might bring my additional little table uh and set it up next to us and kind of make an L shape. And then I would have a perfectly fine spot to like show people drawing stuff.
Yeah,
Um
yeah,
or just more room for my stuff in general.
yeah.
Or somewhere to eat. Uh so
I just thought
uh
about that, like as time has went on, starting out, the 6 foot table is perfect. 6 foot table, that's the standard for most conventions. But then some conventions have the 8 foot table.
mhm.
As time has gone on and like more stuff is being put out, oh, anytime I see that 8 foot table, I'm just like, thank you. Thank you so much. That 6 foot table like is tough now because
Mhm.
one, it's like I gotta take some stuff out. Like there's just some stuff where it's like I can't display it. I could sell it,
Yeah.
but like someone would have to ask about it because it's not on display basically. Um, and but it also it gets me thinking, like the 6 foot table gets me thinking more of like how do I set it up? Like the most recent convention I did was back in October. One thing, I don't know why it took me this long to realize it. Better way of displaying my t-shirts was, hey, actually have the t-shirt like facing up instead of
Mhm.
laying on the table. Um, don't know why it took me that long to realize that. But I did realize like because now I have two t-shirts, like two different t-shirts. Still being able to do that in a 6 foot table environment. I've seen some people have like those like almost like cube things on their table, and then they have like another cube above it, sort of thing.
Mhm.
T-shirt facing out in one cube, t-shirt facing out in the other cube above it. But yeah, it's one of those things where even if like the more and more stuff we make, the more we realize we're tweaking the table. Like I
Yeah.
don't think our tables are ever really staying the same.
No. I have had to change the setup so many times.
Yeah,
I'll change mid con. I'll like, I think if it'll organize better this way,
yeah,
just
yeah,
like rearrange the whole thing. Um, I'm always just trying to like figure out what I'm just like looking at it, and I got now this huge banner that is like taller than me and super wide and stuff. And I don't know where to put it, like other than right
yeah, yeah,
behind me. But if it's right behind me, I like the QR code's hidden, and like it
yeah,
just seems like half of it is just kind of wasted. So I don't like it being behind us, but I don't have a big enough table space for it. And then the small one still says Webtoons on it, and it's like that's not a horrible thing, but it's also inaccurate. So and then like I gushed this like it says it's on Webtoon, but it's not on Webtoon anymore because XX. It's just it comes with
yeah,
this
yeah.
like extra like I feel the need to clarify a thing.
I've only had one convention, which ultimately depends on like the space that they allow, like not just table space, but like the dimension space. I've only had one convention to where, and I wish I could do this all the time, to where I realized the best place for my Gallows Man banner, like yes, it you can see it behind me, you can see the words Gallows Man, you see Gallows Man himself. You do see that, and it does look decent behind me, but I want the thing that like catches your eye right there.
Hmm.
And the one I did in October, someone didn't show up. Like I think it was like an emergency and they weren't able to set their stuff up. So what I did, and I asked the showrunners, they said this was
Hmm.
okay. I put the banner right next to my table. So it popped even more. And like
Hmm.
it was great. Even had a few people like come up and like take pictures next to the banner and stuff. Probably won't ever be able to do that again because unless it's like a 8 by 10 space,
Yeah.
because then that's about 2 feet. The table's about 6 feet, but yeah, most places it's a 6 by 5 space. So
I'm gonna pause real quick because I
okay,
gotta use the restroom. But yeah, the banners like that. Um, it's just kind of like a how can I make the best of the real estate on this banner? And I
yeah,
didn't think about that when I got this most recent one. I just kind of copy pasted the smaller one to the bigger one. But I think it works still because it still has like all the American Demon Comics at the top, and everybody loves that illustration of Envy coming out.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
um, which is kind of like weird to me because I'm like, this image of Emmy isn't actually in the comic yet. So, and like Fritz,
Giving
I
little
have like,
teases.
yeah, I've got like uh Fritz and Lust merch, and I'm like, Fritz and Lust really haven't like made an appearance yet. Like, I
Yeah, if
just now
someone didn't
introduced
read
to it.
the if someone didn't read the webtoon, they're like,
Yeah.
"Am I missing? Did I miss a comic?"
um, but anyways, yeah, I'm looking forward to this low mill con to test out having more table space because I am going to bring up uh, either we I bought a 6 foot table, I think, like a big table, and then I have a very small like 4 foot 3 foot table. Um, so one of those I'm going to take up there to help out um, because they gave us I want to say somebody might have canceled, but I think that they just allow for a lot of space per artist at Low
Okay.
Mill on the second floor. Um,
Isn't theirs is theirs like quarterly? Like it's more than an annual thing, right? Or
um, well, last year they tried out. It might have been the second year they did this, but they had a March show and a November show.
oh, okay.
But I think the November show hasn't gone too well, and Mark, the guy that runs it, was like, "No more November show. This is going to be the only one for 2024." He's like, maybe that'll give it some more exclusivity, and maybe that will not interfere with the football season, and
Oh yeah.
this, that, and the other.
Yeah, that's
Um,
the thing is like the big cons I was going to do this year. I have no idea if they're still happening. Like I like Gamers and Geeks. It's like a big game store in Mobile. It's like the size of a huge warehouse. It's crazy how big it is. Um, they did conventions like 2 or 3 times a year. Like they do a March one, a summer one, and like a winter one usually. Last year they bought MobiCon, like or they are now running MobiCon,
mm,
which is like the big Mobile, Alabama convention. Um, and they did that last year, and I did that one. That one went good. It was their first time doing it. It'll probably be better next year. But I liked their store ones because it is like small. It's
mhm,
big, but it is like small and like I don't know. There's more focus on the artists and stuff there. And I was looking forward to doing those. And I contacted someone a month or two ago, like, hey, like just checking when the dates are and if y'all are doing any of these conventions at your small place or at Gamers and Geeks. It's not small, but uh, and they said March 16th and 17th, and then like June 18th and 19th or something like that. I was like, okay, great. They had applications on their website for people to fill out. I filled that out, and like I think I contacted someone maybe a month ago, being like, "Hey, just checking up as well as if you'll have like a theme for the March one, because usually they'll have a theme. Like last year was Dragon Ball Z Con or something like
mm,
that." And they said we don't have a theme yet, but the date is still there. And for a little over a month, I've been trying to reach out to them, basically just saying like, "Hey, is the March convention still happening? Because like I'm not seeing anything about it on
mhm,
like websites or Facebook or anything." And with the emails and Facebook messengers, I haven't really heard much with it. Probably today, later today, I'm probably just going to call the store and see if
yeah,
someone can just let me know like if that is happening or not. Because I did like that convention, like small convention, but it was a ton of fun. So it was fairly cheap, like
mhm,
and as well as like I'd be a reoccurring vendor to where
yeah.
you also get that reoccurring vendor discount kind of. Um, so maybe that'll happen. So that'll either
Uh,
be my first convention this year or it'll be a library convention like mid-April in Mississippi. So we'll see.
is it South Mississippi?
Um, yeah, I think so. It's called a HCLS Comic Fest or Fan Fest or something. It's
At a library?
free for yeah. It's a big. Well, it's not at the library. It's ran by the library. Now think about it.
Oh, okay.
It's ran by the library and it's at like a civic center or something like that. But for artists and stuff, it's free because they just want to support artists. And I've seen a bunch of different artists as well as like a few uh, comic writers and artists and publishers. They're going to be doing it. So it's also a 1 day thing. So it's like I don't have to pay
Gotcha.
for hotel. There's no entry fee. It's literally just gas.
Yeah. Um, well, that's kind of segueing into what I wanted to talk about. Like, um, the closer Free Comic Day gets, the more I'm unsure of where I want to have it, because my Arab local shop has been really good, and been really supportive of me, uh and try to promote me and stuff like that, and have sold some of my things up there. Um, and I did pretty decent, like on the Halloween event. Um, you know, driving 2 seconds down the road and not having to pay a table fee or anything. And but but there's the Huntsville, the Deep comic shop that I could possibly set up at, where I know there's probably going to be insane amounts of traffic. I've been to their free comic book day several times, and it's just an immense amount of people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, uh, loyalty to my most local shop or lots of traffic and possibly lots more money. Like,
What's the distance like time wise from you to the deep?
it's like 30 minutes, give or take.
Okay, that's not bad. This is just me. It's ultimately your decision. I would try the deep, and also because I'm going to be doing this with TBS Comics Pensacola. Next week I'm going to go ahead and call them. Well, really, I've got the owner's number. I'm going to text him and just see if it's okay if I do it again. I'm 99% sure like he's just going to be like, yeah, like it was a great time last year, that sort of thing. But like check, I mean, at this point, basically 3 months in advance, just to be sure, as well as like with something like the deep, I don't know, there could be one or two artists that are already going to do free comic book day.
Yeah.
So to make sure you're in that before, not saying the comic shop would get filled up with artists, but just
Hmm.
to make sure. So I would try the deep, and if they'll have you try it out, and then maybe next year, if you want to do the deep again, you can, or if you want to do the one in Arab, you can. If you're not able to do the deep this year, you've got Arab. So
Hmm. It's a moral
yeah,
conundrum with me. I'm
the
like,
loyalty thing, I get that.
um, I might try and do. That'd be a lot of work. I think do both places.
Mm.
It's depending on how long the day would run, but I think it usually dies down by like 3 o'clock, so that'd be a lot
Yeah,
of work.
like what I did, and I'm going to adjust it this year. Last year was my first time doing free comic book day, and they asked like how long I would be there, and they're fine with whatever time. But I was like, I'll do like from opening to, I think I said 5 p.m. Ultimately, it went very good, but like going to 5 p.m. is dumb because like
Hmm.
it's literally like you said, 3 p.m. is where it is like dead or dying basically.
Hmm.
Um, to where this year I'll probably say, yeah, I can do opening to 3:30, probably. Um, if if you're able to to like basically
Well,
branch out, like you have different
mhm.
sects, you have like whether a friend or your girlfriend running it at this shop, and then you're running at this shop, like that's good if you're
Yeah.
able to do that.
Um, I guess that's a possibility. Knowing the local comic book shop, they try to have events going on that go into the night. So they might have something happening on free comic
Mm,
book night as well,
mm.
that I could take advantage of. But
Yeah, so day, the deep, and then afternoon slash night, uh,
hmm.
the Arab one. Yeah, I can see that.
All right. And then I wanted to ask you uh about if you were told of WeevilCon, which is it's a
Is that
enterprise.
in? Yeah, yeah. I think I've heard of it. I haven't seen it on any of like the like the Comic Con XYZ, or like those sites that you can
Hmm.
find the comic conventions. When is that?
It's in June, I want to say.
June?
I
Okay.
want to say it's a 3-day one. And I thought that you might be interested in doing it. I paid to do it last year, and then
Mhm.
they canceled it because of scheduling. It was like interfering with other conventions, and they didn't want to have that conflict of interest, or well, like people going to other conventions while they're having theirs. And I think they just had like kind of a lack of planning that they didn't really want to hit off with. So they were like, okay, so if you bought a spot, you can keep it or be refunded, but we're going to postpone it to the following year. So I kept my spot and it'll be in June, which is a
Okay.
nice like summer convention that I can do, but it's like a card shop that hosts it. So I
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
how big it's going to be, but the volunteers or the workers at the Paracon were like, "You should come do this one. You should come do this one." So
Yeah. If you find, because I'm trying to find a it's probably under like their the card shop's Facebook page. I went to
yeah,
a WeebleCon Facebook page, and it's showing stuff for last year's. But yeah, I'd be interested in doing something like that because Enterprise isn't that far, as well as
right.
at least what I saw with Gamers and Geeks. Whenever it's like these smaller conventions and it's ran by basically a comic shop or game shop, it, at least with Gamers and Geeks, it went pretty well. So, and if it's not like outrageous table costs that some of the small conventions do, and this, I'm not saying this about any of the ones that I've done, or
Hmm.
like, but I've seen some where they're charging basically like almost like fan expo prices. It's like, not trying to be mean, you're not at that level. Like
Right.
like you can work up to that, but you are not there yet. Like you can still charge something. I'm not saying like make it free for vendors and artists. Like you have to be able to have the money to have the venue, as well as if you have any celebrity guests, be able to pay for their hotel and that sort of
Hmm.
stuff. I know that's where decent bit of the money comes from, is vendors paying for their tables and that sort of stuff. But if you're a 2 or 3 year old convention, I've seen these like in Louisiana and everywhere. It's like can't be charging like $300 for the weekend or more. A lot of times
Yeah.
it's more, and it's like no,
That's- we'll be lucky to get like 150. Like,
exactly.
can't pay 300 for that.
Yeah.
Um. Well, I want to talk about the so so I've been posting my comic on Instagram, Reddit, Facebook. I slice it up. Uh, so for anyone that doesn't understand, I do make it in a full page format, so it can be in print at a normal um, comic book size. But I usually go into Photoshop and I start slicing out the panels and I set them up in a way in which you can scroll or in which you can swipe and read the comic with clarity online. And I've been posting to those three places. I post a week early on Patreon, and I post on my website. And I still probably have about several years of trying to build up an audience in which I can uh, get kind of a regular feedback on everything. Um, but on Reddit, I've now had two comment engagements from different from from a post a few weeks ago. like a month ago before I ended the first issue, and then more recently another post that I put on the esoteric Reddit. Um, and that is so nice to have some organic feedback
Yeah,
that that isn't like really requested. They just felt like they wanted to say something. So
yeah,
um, Reddit has been really nice. I know that Reddit kind of has a uh, they have an upvote and a downvote system. So a lot of there are things where you post in the webcomics Reddit seems to be friendlier than the regular comics Reddit. It seems like people will actively downvote uh, posts. So I don't have any in the negative, but I have some that go 5, 3, 4,
yeah.
and it like levels out, or goes down to 0. Um, but I usually get
Not,
like a lot of.
I'm
Mhm.
not bashing comic fans, but me and Tio had talked about this. We've been slight little plug. There's a short that we did that was fantastic that tackled this, as well as like
Mhm.
gave constructive criticism towards comic fans. But yeah, there's the average comic fan. I'm not talking about web comic fans because I have
Mhm.
seen like the people that are into web comics are more encouraging and I don't know, they're I'm not saying the average comic fan is an old person that's stuck in the past of the classic Marvel and DC era. There's
Mhm.
a lot of people like that though, that think that's all comics can be and the way comics are now, they disagree with and they hate comics now and all this stuff. But I don't know. I gave some constructive criticism on that in Tio and I's podcast, but yeah, like and you can say something that can come off as negative, but ultimately is like constructive criticism.
Mhm.
But I would say the average comic fan does not do that. Like, and I shouldn't say this is all comic fans. This is just the vocal majority that you find online. So I'm not even saying that's all comic fans. It's just the ones that go
Yeah.
to the keyboard.
Keyboard warrior.
Yeah, yeah. So
Uh, w- Shoot, what was I gonna say? Oh, I'm with Brad. So Brad Geiger has this like enormous rant and problem with people when they are trying to give constructive criticism, and they start their comment with dot 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 or dot dot dot, and I think the spelling should be X Y. And it's like he's like, "Go die in a fire if you start your comment like that." And I'm like, "Yes,
yeah,
there's no reason for that." It's because it's
yeah,
just a condescending like
exactly. Yeah.
tone that is just so
Because you can give your
grating.
constructive criticism. It's just, yeah, that sounds like very condescending and like you're just, it almost sounds like you're being like passive aggressive kind of. It's just like you can state it as like not a fact, but just like here is the criticism I have of this, or here's a critique that you could utilize, and they'll list it, and that's okay. But yeah, like what you're saying, where it's like it's a um actually, shouldn't he be over here instead of here? Question mark.
It's like I can I can hear it in when you're talking with a friend, and a friend does that in kind of
Mhm.
in a you know just trying to be funny, kind of picking
Yeah,
at you
yeah.
kind of way. But when you're like a fan, or and you like type it out, like you took the time to go dot 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 with your keyboard. It's like Ugh. Okay. Anyways, so I wanted to start off with like Reddit seems to be like um a good place, like kind of in general for my posting.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I don't get a lot of likes on Instagram, and again, we talked about this before. We're not really we use likes and that kind of thing to be a like indicator, like is this doing well,
Is it
and
reaching?
do people, yeah, and is it reaching? And it's like TikTok seems to be like good about that. Um, and in a place where I used to post, um, and it used to be like fitness posts, and it used to be posts of me, but it was this way on every platform. So a great example is when I was 12 years old. I loved World of Warcraft, and I'm gonna have been 12, 13 years old at this time. And I was watching this guy, Hobbs, or he was like Wow Hobbs. And it was this Canadian guy that was very soft spoken. And he's like, okay, guys, we're going to do some gold farming tips today. I'm a protection paladin, and we're in the Scarlet Monastery. And, and he's like walking you through this little process that he does where he's like really high level and he's in this lower level dungeon and he pulls up all the mobs. So I basically just took that formula and replicated it and put music over it.
Mhm.
And I was like, uh, all right, doing the WoW Hobbs version of pulling in Hellfire Peninsula. Like I'm just a few levels higher than these mobs, but I can round all them up and defeat them. Because I was like, whatever this WoW Hobbs guy is doing, I'm gonna do it verbatim. Like I'm just gonna take
Mhm.
everything. And so I was a protection paladin, and I did the same thing. And then and I made several videos like this and just put music over them. And I think one of them got up to 10,000 views. And that is just insane reach. Like that's just crazy to me thinking about right now that I had like this small amount of early power in YouTube that I didn't like absolutely just jump on. I was just like, oh wow, a few thousand views. I guess this is kind of easy, huh? So I it was like that with a lot of um social media. A lot of early social media, it seemed like you post on Facebook, you post on Instagram, you just start getting
Yeah.
passive likes like crazy. And then when I started doing art, years later, where I wanted to be more organized about posting art um, and doing social media and using it as a tool, the likes just were gone. The views were just gone. It just felt like you just fell off the face of the earth or something.
Yeah, because
And
it's the past few years, one, the algorithm has changed and can't figure out what will actually be pushed out there or not, as well as all social media does this, and I talked about before, where starting out in whatever social media platform it is, they will push your stuff out more if you're starting out because it's a way of getting you engaged in the social media, you as a user, because like, ooh, like a lot of people are liking my stuff, so I'm just going to keep using this. And then after some months or a few weeks or whatever, they're like, okay, we did our job. We gave you the reach. Now we're going to pull that back,
mhm,
and you're hooked. We hooked you that first few weeks. Yeah, it's frustrating and annoying, as well as like you can clearly see it not just with likes, because Instagram does have an insight thing where you can see the inside of each of your posts
mhm,
and stuff. The post I made 2 or 3 years ago had at least triple the eyes it reached than it
mhm,
does now. The thing is, like, someone might be like, well, like obviously it's the algorithm. But if someone saw the likes, they'd be like, oh, like it's just like your content, it's not the same. The people don't like it that much anymore. You look at the inside, it's like, no, 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 it just doesn't get pushed out as much anymore, even though it's basically the same type of
Hmm.
content.
Right. And I was going into this thinking that, like, well, if I actually like dial in and try and do this more seriously, then it'll be way easier to get likes. And like you said, I just think that and not just the algorithms, but just the volume of users has
Yeah.
changed it. I think that the people that run you know, Zuckerberg and now Elon and those other people that run the social media platforms at a higher level have changed things. I think terms of service changes probably, you know, do different things to your viewership and everything. And now it just seems like it's a funnel of like you have to get onto this track, this, you know, this narrow line of tracks to get the views,
Yeah.
and it seems like the Pareto principle has kind of played its part in social media. Um, and what the frustrating part about that, all that it really is recently I had somebody, you know, I offered to do promotional artwork for an event, and they were like, okay, well, what's your following?
Mhm.
And it's like, not really there. I don't do stuff that inherently just gets me followers. Uh, like, what do you think about my work? Like, what does the work look like to you?
Yeah.
Is it worth it? You know, but it doesn't get followers. You know, in this atmosphere of social media right now. And I don't know. And to me, you know, I don't know if that is the quality of my work or if it is all this other stuff having is surrounded by social media.
Well, I'll say like the social media thing definitely does play a big role into it because like with me as a writer, like there's publishers that I've reached out to before, had pitches, had like stuff already good to go. And again, I am biased. It's the stuff I wrote. So I whatever you write or whatever you create, you think it's good.
Hmm.
If you're going to put it out there, you must think your stuff is good enough to
Hmm.
be out there. Um, and basically rejection letter sort of thing, which is fine. But then I see examples of people who have a big following. Also, keep in mind, when I sent this, I have made comics already. I am experienced in making comics. Then I see examples of people who have never made a comic before. Maybe they're a comic fan, never made a comic before, but they have a big following or they have a big YouTube channel.
Hmm.
And because of that, they then were able to utilize that, go to those publishers and be like, hey, I've got this idea. And the publisher is instantly like, yes, because of the following, because the publisher's saying, like, okay, well, we'll at least sell this many books
Right.
because of his following or his fan. And then we'll sell more as well. But that can be sometimes frustrating.
Hmm.
Not discrediting, this isn't a specific targeting anyone specifically. I've just seen this happen over the past 2 or 3 years with publishers. Um, I'm not saying their stuff is bad. Their stuff is probably good, but it's just odd that like this person who in all reality doesn't have any experience in comic making since this is
Mhm.
their first one. I'm not saying they aren't like a skilled or talented writer
Mhm.
or whatever it may be, but this is their first comic they've ever made, and yet they're getting picked up by a big indie publisher.
Yeah.
That can be frustrating.
And like you don't know if they are remnants of like what either they've landed on their algorithm and they know how to utilize it, or if they were a remnant of like people that got followers when it was easier,
Yeah, yeah,
um and they have just been able to retain like because their engagement might be way down, but they still have like dead accounts following them.
yeah, yeah.
um so it's what I don't want to be the person to be like, oh, it was easier back then, but I also am like, I did it back then and it was easier.
I was gonna say, if you
But
don't want to be that person, I'll at least say it a little bit. That doesn't mean I'm like giving up today or crying about today,
right.
but yeah, I was doing this back in October of 2019 when I was a novice at comic making. Like I
Mhm.
had a comic done, had not published that comic yet. And for a couple of years, those first couple of years to like 2021, great engagement and was seeing it consistently go up and up and up. And then sometime in 2022, it just like just the brakes slammed
Yeah.
and it just wasn't the same. Hasn't ever been the same.
Hmm. Well, all this is to kind of be like, I don't, it seems like the attitude of like my own attitude towards what I ingest from social media is I'm trying to slow it down, and I feel like a veil has been broken about you know how much time people spend on social media. And a lot of people are like, man, I really need to like put down the phone. I need to do that. And I feel like there's a shift going on just in society.
Yeah.
um Now you do have like a lot of influencers and stuff, but I think a lot of that can come from like what gaming industries call the whales. So you have your people that are just high investment into social media, and somehow the people gambling or people uh, using thirst traps and that kind of thing kind of ingest the whales that want to spend a lot of money on that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so that probably plays a part into how they grow. But I think that just in general, the the regular person is trying to spend a lot less time on social media.
Yeah. I think you're right.
And I think that we just need to be on the lookout and be ready for the next thing that would help our marketing flow.
Yeah.
Because I think there's probably a demand for it because we're not the only ones. But at the same time, I've only been really pushing this for about a year now, so I might have more. I've got to stick with it. I've at least, I've got to put in my work for it, and I got to keep making the comics and growing the archive. But I think that there's going to be something different coming up that
Yeah.
will that we just have to be ready to adapt with,
Yeah. That makes sense.
because I think social media kind of was that 15 years ago
Yeah.
when social media came about. People had to be ready to jump on board with that and get themselves out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's it. Deadening of social media. Um, and I don't. There's other things that we can talk about, but it can hold off to our next podcast. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Brandon?
Um, that's pretty much it. And then I guess I'll like tag on, like, if someone's listening to this and they are an indie creator, don't feel like that should like discredit you from doing social media and stuff. Like
Right.
that's an important thing with being an indie creator, but also like realize the reason you did this was to create, to make the thing.
Hmm.
Um, Focus on, are you satisfied with the work you're doing
Right.
before worrying about others essentially with your work. Like if you're an indie creator, most of the time, unless you're a rich billionaire and you have connections or whatever with industry people, and your first creation can just be put out there. Um, if you're an indie creator, you are doing this, you're not making any money. You should be doing it simply for your enjoyment. Like you have a story to tell, or you have these beautiful art pieces, or whatever it may be. You have this art that you want to create, and it's been in your head for a long time, and now you're happy with it, and then now you can put it out there. But the big thing is your satisfaction with it, not
Right.
letting that be tainted or get distorted because of issues with social media or whatever it may be. Like, this isn't your job. This is for fun. If it becomes your job in the future, that's great. But starting out, most indie creators, this is a fun passion thing we have. So stay passionate with it. Love the stuff you make. If whatever you're making, at least starting out, make sure it's something like you love and you want to do. If you are making the big marketing cash cow, but there's no passion behind it, it could sell the first time. Probably won't, because that's just how indie comics are. But you're also just not putting your full passion and soul into it. Bottom line, write, draw, whatever it may be, what you want to see or what you want, and let it go from there.
Hmm. Yep. And with that, we are going to end the podcast. It's been great talking to you, Brandon, and I'll see you in a few weeks.
Take care.